Welcome to this week's deep dive. This week, we're super excited because we have Vicki Ahlstrom, who is the trend editor at Sanmar, as well as the editor of her newly launched blog, Trenddependent. And Vicki, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
You were the perfect fit for this week because we decided to talk about trends and sort of what to expect, what to look for, what is happening in this world right now, like all the different things. And
Yeah.
you had amazing answers.
Thank you.
Yeah. So where we're going to start is, because the options were many, is we're going to start with our last question, which we had was, when it comes to business trends, what are your strategies for predicting the future? And if anyone knows Vicki, is that 280 characters is not enough for her. She's going to need more. So over 3 tweets here, you answered, in the past, I've looked to the biggest brands. Having much to lose, they generally make very measured, well-researched decisions. Some are making great choices, like Lowe's sponsoring New York Fashion Week and making runway backdrops for those designers showing digitally. They can't move very fast. Now, pivoting quickly is essential. I'm looking to new brands or smaller and mid-sized brands for business direction. They are showing incredible creativity, insight, and they understand customers' need right now and into the future. Example, it's incredibly inspiring, high snobbery staples line of clothing. Okay,
Yeah.
so much to cram in there.
Twitter is not really my yeah, my friend.
Oh, you got one.
Oh, I have one.
Wait, how much you go there?
I can own all the characters.
Yes, you're like, don't stop me at one pair.
Yes.
So let's break this down to different things. So I love this idea of like the big brands are now trying to, they always move very cautiously, but now they're having to, that annoying word, pivot or innovate really quickly. So what was Lowe's doing sponsoring New York Fashion Week? Like what were they responding to, and what did they do for it?
Well, I thought it was so brilliant because we, for several years now, a lot of us have been bringing as much of our world into our home as we could, because finances are tight for a lot of people, so it kind of was needed to be done. Like a lot of people were starting to exercise more at home because it is expensive to have a gym membership, but also we just didn't have time. A lot of people had side gigs to make one whole income between a full-time job and maybe a couple side gigs. So we still want to exercise, so they were starting to exercise more at home, and technology was reaching that point where there was actually really great options with Peloton and the Mirror, and now there's a whole bunch of other things too where you could exercise really effectively at home. We were entertaining more at home because it was expensive to go out, and also just maybe sometimes a little scary, like being crowds. Some people were starting to kind of feel not great about that. So there was just a lot of reasons that we were already doing a lot of things at home and nesting, and really looking at our homes as not just a place to be between business trips, but actually a place that we enjoyed being and wanted to just have these sanctuaries built around us to cut down the noise that was outside. And then the pandemic hit, so, and then we're like, well, I wanted to be at home because I was choosing it, not because I had to be, but we did. So it's like, I have this trend theory that micro is macro now, because it's a macro trend that we have been thinking more about things more close to home, things in a smaller way. We had tiny homes. Those have been a big deal for a while. People were really engaged with that. And then we were bringing things in. That was a micro concept, bringing it local. We're more engaged with buying local. Who's the business down the street? Can I support them? And now all of that is just on hyperdrive with the pandemic, and bringing everything in and thinking more personally and locally. And so our homes are really important to us, and there's this whole concept of now investment nesting. So we're not just looking at our home as like, oh, it would just be so awesome if I could just make it a little bit prettier. It's like, no, I get to look at the the money I put into my home as an investment, literally, but also an investment in myself, that this is my sanctuary. This is where I am comfortable. This is where I'm happy. And so it's a luxury to me to have beautiful things around me that I want to have around me. And so a lot of fashion companies are starting to really understand that on a deep level and realizing, well, it's not even just the clothing that I could provide for you because I am a fashion company, but maybe I want to sell a home product too. Like maybe I want to get into selling blankets. Maybe I want to start selling candles or, you know, I don't even know, like
Yeah.
home furnishings or pillows, or, I have fabric, I could make a pillow. I could, so there's a lot of that bleeding in from fashion into the home world. And a lot of designers have been moving into designing for home for a number of years too. I mean, Vera Wang has a home, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, they've all started selling home product in the last few years. So with Fashion Week, Lowe's, going even a step more into the building materials, people are really getting into do it yourself. And there's the new create it yourself. I love that term, CIY. Um, with pandemic, people have started to actually build some things in their home, or make a lamp or make their own something, and so it's just a perfect extension that for Fashion Week, Lowe's became a sponsor, because as a lot of the designers were deciding how are they showing? Are they showing at Fashion Week? How would you do it if you can't get people together? So, some of them did Christian Siriano did a runway in his backyard,
Yeah.
and built a runway over his pool and had the models walk over his pool, so Lowe's helped to actually build some of the backdrops for a few of the designers who did do a sort of a runway thing in a socially distanced way, in an outdoor nature space. And it was just really smart because people who watched it are also investment nesting,
Yeah.
so that's smart, that's smart on fashion's part, and it's smart on Lowe's part to think in this completely new way of a partnership that in the past probably wouldn't have made a lot of sense.
And what a neat way for them to kind of get into a trend. Like, you don't think a home improvement company is like, we're going to be trend aware.
Yeah.
And yet, like, what a neat way, because it also ties into that, the trend. I mean, if anyone hasn't listened to Vicky's presentation at SKUCon, highly suggest go find that, because it was amazing and very scary on how accurate she was. It was just kind of like, what does she know that we don't? But you talked a lot. You talked there, and you have a great blog article, like blog entry on your on trenddependent.com. We'll do the plug for you about cottagecore. And so that's kind of ties into this as well, is that like how long cottagecore has actually been around for. So can
Yeah.
you sort of expand on what cottagecore is for people who are just like, cottage what?
Cottage what? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting how fast the word cottagecore is kind of starting to come into a lot of different industries, but cottagecore in a nutshell is it's one of the cores. So we it's kind of a lifestyle that has been embraced by Gen Z women, actually, which is interesting. And it's like an aesthetic, essentially. It's about being outside and being in nature and calming down and slowing down and going to more of an analog type of life, where you're like literally walking in the woods with a picnic basket and sitting down on a beautiful, green lawn, and throwing out your gingham, blanket, and having a picnic and eating strawberries. Like it's this old, like, it's like you're idealizing a time in the world that probably none of these like Gen Zers ever lived in,
Yeah.
but it's this idealized world that doesn't really exist, but they want to exist. and it's a lot of gingham and calico and flowers and, mushrooms and strawberries and, just this kind of beautiful world. Um, and I think it's so embraced because of this thing that we were just talking about of just wanting to slow down and create safe spaces for ourselves. And I think the young people are really needing that so badly because, they've been living through school shootings, and they've been, practicing for the potential of a school shooting for pretty much their whole life. And that's really traumatizing. And I think it's so tragic that Gen Z people who are, 7 to 22 or 23-ish years old need to slow down. Like, when has
Yeah.
that happened in our lifetime? That's so sad. They should be speeding up. They should be going as fast as they want to go and just like living. And they are like in this place where they just want to cocoon and draw back from the world and slow and be calm and cozy. And so the ironic thing is that it's a world that's being proliferated almost exclusively on social media. So they're using digital platforms to get away from digital platforms.
Talk about a rustic lifestyle.
Right, to talk about a rustic lifestyle. But, we are all living through digital worlds right now because we are pretty much inside our homes. And
Yeah.
so it is a respite. It's a place to escape and look at these beautiful images of calming outdoor spaces, and we're really engaged with the outdoors right now, and the beauty of nature, and thinking about sustainability of earth and how can we help. And so it makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels, this aesthetic of this beautiful, calm, lovely outdoor space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
and
can see
it's
it in
go ahead.
product as well. Like, I mean, you gave the example of like Taylor Swift's album. Like, she immediately tied a cardigan, and like the
Yes.
coziest looking cardigan ever. And like,
Yeah.
and fashion trends are for, even before the pandemic, they were for bulkier like sweatshirts and
Yes.
cozier and textures,
Uh-huh.
and even like the sourdough rise. Like, you've seen like people
Yes.
adapting to like
Baking and yeah.
baking and like that home time, and making
Uh-huh.
home time a respite instead of like
Yeah.
a mandatory thing, which is
Yeah.
what we're all kind of going through.
Right.
And like the proliferation of food gifts. Like, Maple Ridge Farm said that they have had the busiest time ever, and normally like so much of their sales are in fourth quarter, but everyone just kind of was like, no, I'm going to give you snacks, I'm going to give
Yeah.
you comfort, I'm going to give
Yeah.
you like something like fulfilling, like
Yes.
literally filling your
Right.
stomach, but also like,
Yeah.
here's a thoughtful gift and a physical gift. And yeah, and you're seeing like that rise on certain things, and there's so many different ways you can apply it to gifting, especially as we go into fourth quarter. Is
Yeah.
what do you do with that? And
Right. And
yeah.
it's something you can control. And that makes so much sense too. Like, we all are looking for control. That everything seems kind of hard to understand, and how hard to figure out how you could be of help or fix anything, so you can make a a bread
Yeah.
potentially,
Which, when you
theoretically.
make your own bread,
Right.
so satisfying. You're just like,
Right. You're like,
yeah.
I'm the queen of the world. Yes. I am my grandmother.
Yeah.
Um,
My
but
sister got into gardening and like produced one tiny watermelon, and she's like, I'm providing for my family, and a squirrel ate half of it. And I
I
was just like, you are providing for that squirrel's family.
That's what our whole garden was too. We were like going to have a victory garden, and
Yeah.
we actually have a space for a garden this year, and we were like, we got one blueberry, we got two raspberries.
What a
Yeah,
victory.
yeah, I know. Like, well,
Yeah.
it's a
Because
very
we do
expensive
tomatoes.
blueberry.
Yeah. So do you want what
Yes.
other things to make tomatoes with?
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, I don't like them anymore.
Okay. I'll take them.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I do have one personal question about a
Yes.
trend, which I find so interesting, is the tie-dye trend. So
Uh-huh.
I'm wearing my one tie-dye
Love
outfit that
it.
I bought because Johanna Gottlieb, the chair of Pearl Kitchen, goes, have you really lived if you haven't gotten a tie-dye item during the pandemic? And I was like, I don't think I've lived yet. So But I find this so interesting because tie-dye was always relegated towards like hippies and,
Yeah.
you know, like camp
Summer of
shirts and
love
stuff
and
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And now it's everywhere. Like I've seen breweries, I've seen high fashion really incorporate
Mhm.
tie-dye. So what started
Yeah.
this?
Well, I mean, it does have a definitely a nostalgic bent to it, which feels so good to us right now. Like anything nostalgic, we're just like, I get it, you know? Like I'm watching every nostalgic show, like I was saying in the Twitter, I'm like, Friends, Taxi even, you know, like I am old enough to I didn't embrace Taxi when it was on, but I was a little young for it, but I like anything that doesn't have a cell phone in it, I'm like so happy, you know?
Golden Girls is
Golden
Oliver
Girls,
Prime,
yeah.
right?
But the tie-dye thing, you know, when you think about it too, it also they're so beautiful. Like all the different configurations that you can get with tie-dye, it's so creative, it's so just visually beautiful. And as we're looking at everything digitally on a screen, it's one of the most beautiful things you can look at, you know, like this is nice, this stripe is fine, but the color behind me and the color you have on is more interesting, you know, and that is lovely. The other thing that's interesting, I think, is that, you know, over the last few years, we've seen a lot of stories about space, and we're thinking about, could we go to Mars? Who's going to get there first? What if I could be a citizen astronaut? Could I do that? You know, like, so like we've seen astrology become more interesting and celestial bodies and images of stars, and we're seeing so many more space images. And then there's been pictures coming back from NASA of like the rings of Saturn and things like that. So we're starting to see more and more of these space images that kind of are not unlike tie-dye. You know, when you think
Yeah.
about it, they're kind of swirly and colorful. And then we've also seen a lot of images of science things um like like biology, like you know, petri dishes, and you know, like look at the virus that's growing here, and you know, and
Yeah.
like now we have pandemic, and so how many times have we seen the coronavirus, you know, in all different kinds of iterations. And so we're starting to see all these medical imagery too that are again not unlike some of the tie-dye shapes, you know, they're just kind of like organic. And you know, and I think it just all adds up to this really, like we're like really interested in organic shapes that don't fit a certain pattern. Just
Yeah.
feels good to us right now.
Well, and it kind of goes into that idea of like personalization as a trend too. Like
Yeah.
you're all like if you have like team uniforms that have a tie dye or you have like
Yeah.
group uniforms that are tie dye, is that you all are dressed the same, but you all look different.
Yeah.
Like how are you a unique snowflake just like everyone else is?
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
like
I mean, you know, I work for Sanmar, and I was shocked to find that our tie-dye t-shirts from Sanmar are each done individually. Like I just thought, oh, well, it's, you know, mass produced. They're probably printed that way or something, you know, I don't
yeah.
know. And I'm in that industry, you know, like I come from an
Well, who's
apparel design
tie dyeing them?
background, you know. I'm like, well, they can't make that many like personally tie-dyed. They're like, yeah, every one of them's tie-dyed separately. You're like, wow. So even in that mass production way, tie-dye is still a handcrafted type item,
Yeah.
which is really
Goes
cool.
circles right back to the create it yourself
Yeah,
attitude of like this
yeah,
is a home creation because everyone
right.
remembers doing tie-dye in some form and
Hmm.
this is a home creation mass produced.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now that we've gone full circle, thank you, Vicky, for being on here. Thank you to our sponsor, Maple Ridge Farms, who I literally plug them just because they do amazing home gifts, but they do
It all
amazing home gifts
tastes,
for it.
yeah.
I know it all worked. And so, Vicky, where can we find you on the internet?
We please check out sanmar.com. We go to the marketing, and you can find the Style Network, which is the style blog that I write there. And then I also have trenddependent.com, which is my own personal blog where I'm just exploring all kinds of ideas like cottagecore and tie-dye and things like that, and the fashion aspects, beauty, food, all kinds of industries, and what it means to trend. So check me
Yeah.
out there.
This is total like fawning over you. I love all your writing. You have a great thing. People, if you're
Thank
not
you.
paying attention to what Vicky's writing, you're going to be like, who could have seen the pandemic coming? Instead of the rest of us going, Vicky saw the pandemic coming.
I know who saw it.
Yeah. You're just kind of like, okay, what level of psychic? But you were on trend, and
You're so
and it's
sweet.
a great way to kind of be able to take those tools and share them with your clients and show off, and especially for fashion, is like the writing you do for Sandmar is great. So
Thank
highly
you.
suggest keep going, but thank you. Everyone,
Thank
remember
you
to
so
follow
much.
us. Join Promo Kitchen on Promo Chat. We have it every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, and just follow the hashtag. So thank you again, Vicki.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.